Welcome back, everyone. There's a lot going on this channel these days. I thought I'd give a quick update before we get into the topic of today's video, the logic of Muhammad. I'm nearly complete with a video that's been put back on the shelf and taken off of the shelf many times over the last several months. The topic of Abraham and Nimrod and the furnace in the Quran, both in rabbinic sources as well as in some Greek traditions related to Zoroastrianism. I've run into issue after issue after issue in the research, and every issue I run into opens up a whole new and fascinating door. So I'm about 3 hours or so away from crafting the final part of that video into the narrative, and then I'll just need to get the time to record and edit that massive project, which I'll be very glad to get off of my list finally. I'm sure it'll be very informative. So there's that's happening. The Answering Muslims series, of course, we did God Resting, and then a 5-video series on the 4 Gospels, the authorship and dating of the Gospels, and then followed that up with the Lost Sheep of Israel, as well as numerous other older videos in that playlist. The next video in that series will be on 1 Samuel 15, and that video is completely ready for recording, so I just need to record and edit that one. And then in the research phase is the Shahada, or should I say the Shahadas, plural. The early Shahadas varied with respect to time and geographical location. So that's a research project that will go on for several months, no doubt, but will, once again, at least I hope be a very informative video. So those are the major things going on, and then there are numerous, probably 6 or 7 or 8 or so smaller video projects that I'm working on in parallel. So lots to come for sure. But occasionally I will shove all of that aside and do something more time sensitive. So of course I produced a video recently called Thanks Muhammad for the Death Threats. And in that video I criticized both Muhammad and the caliphs for their harsh words and harsh treatment of apostates. Now, some Muslims are such poor thinkers that they believe that criticizing the hateful words and deeds of Muhammad and the caliphs is itself a form of hate speech. Criticizing hatred is hate speech. In my book, that's actually anti-hate speech. And Muslims want to silence this so-called hate speech. Now, one Muslim tried to do this through the only means he has available on YouTube. And his name, this may surprise you, is Muhammad. He reported me because he wants to silence me. Here in the West, that's just about all Muslims can do. They can label someone an Islamophobe, or they can attempt to report them and have them banned from social media. That's about the extent of their silencing. Unfortunately, for many people in other parts of the world, the penalty for this so-called hate speech is much more severe. According to Pakistani law, if you defile the sacred name of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, it's punishable by death or imprisonment for life and shall also be liable to fine. But where does this all come from, this ideology about silencing criticism of Muhammad by violent and or lethal means, if necessary? It comes from Islam's earliest sources. In Muhammad's earliest existing biography, we have the infamous incident of the 2 girls who used to sing satirical songs about Muhammad, and he ordered that they should be killed. But of course, Muhammad's earliest biography is a weak source. It's been corrupted by the Jews, or maybe Constantine. I've lost track. So let's go to another source. Here we have a blind man. He had a slave mother who used to abuse the Prophet and disparage him. By the way, abuse in these hadith collections is synonymous with verbal criticism. One night she began to slander the Prophet and abuse him. So he took a dagger, placed it on her belly, pressed it, and killed her. A child who came between her legs was smeared with the blood that was there. When the morning came, the Prophet was informed about it. And of course, since slandering Muhammad is worthy of death, as we saw from the Pakistani legal code, the Prophet said, no retaliation is payable for her blood. We see then that silencing criticism of Islam has a long and violent history going right back to Muhammad. It's kind of like the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall wasn't erected to keep people from streaming into communism. It was erected to keep people from leaving. And if Islamic criticism can be silenced, then the Islamic Berlin Wall remains intact, and people are less likely to flock out of Islam. And that's why many Muslims want us silenced.
Can you learn to be quiet? Can you be quiet? Can you be quiet? Can you be quiet?
Because as criticism of Islam increases, then the Islamic Berlin Wall comes crumbling down, and Muslims leave Islam.
Recent Pew Research shows that between 2010 and 2016, 160,000 people have left Islam.
So what happens if you, as a Muslim, criticize me in the comments section? Call me names, profanity, etc. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me one bit. But what if you, because I criticize the violence of your prophet, what if you try to silence me by reporting me? That I have a problem with. And for that, I suppose I can put the rest of my projects on hold and have yet another shred session, this time on the logic of Muhammad. We'll start with this incident at Khaybar. Remember, this is when Muhammad and his men ambushed the Jews in this community as they're going out to work their fields, carrying their shovels and their baskets and so forth. And Muhammad shouted, "Allahu Akbar," Khaybar is destroyed. Aisha later said of this incident that ever since we conquered Khaybar, we had all of the dates that we could eat. So rather than grow their own food, the Muslims decided to attack the Jews and take theirs. When Khaybar was conquered, a cooked sheep containing poison was given to Muhammad as a gift. Now let's think about this. You conquer a Jewish village named Khaybar. You take their food and you levy a heavy tax onto that community. And then you get a gift of food from them. Does anything seem suspicious? Nope, not if you're Muhammad. The Prophet, in his ailment in which he died, used to say, "Oh Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I eat at Khaybar, and at this time I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison." I honestly believe if we were to administer a survey to every Muslim who has ever lived and ever will live, and that survey had one simple question on it: should you eat food given to you by a village that you have just ruthlessly conquered? I think there would only be one yes to that question, and that person would be Muhammad. Next, some woman asked Muhammad, "What is deficient in our intelligence and religion?" He said, "Is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man?" And they said yes. He said, "This is the deficiency in her intelligence." So women, by the way, if you're having issues keeping up with the pace of this video because you're half as intelligent as a man, then you can go to Muhammad's Gift to Modern Women on YouTube, and that's that little setting where you can change the playback speed to 1/2 speed, just for you women who have half the intellect of a man. Let's look at another one. Muhammad said, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man?" The women said yes. He said, "This is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind." So let's put these two things together. When asked, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man?" Muhammad said yes. This is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind. When asked, "What is the proof that a woman is intellectually deficient?" Muhammad replied, "The witness of two women is equal to one man." So according to Muhammad, if you're a woman, your testimony is worth half that of a man because you're intellectually deficient, and the proof of your intellectual deficiency is that your testimony is worth half that of a man. So you can see the flow of Muhammad's argument. It's curved, it's round, like a circle. It's circular in nature, kind of like this illustration I prepared. Now hold on to that diagram because we're going to come back to it. But first, just as a side note, the majority of the inhabitants of hell are women, according to Muhammad. And if you could convince women that the reason that the majority of the inhabitants of hell are women, if you could convince them that's due to their deficient intellect, it would be a really good way to extort some money from them, because you could demand payment as a way to compensate for their lack of intellect. But who would do that? Muhammad. He passed by the women and said, "Give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of hellfire are women. They are the most deficient in intellect." It's fascinating, right? You women are a bunch of dimwits, which is why you end up in hell, but if you give me some money, we'll smooth things over with the law. We'll make it okay. Funny how that works. Now we're going to take one more side road before we come back to our diagram with Muhammad's reasoning, which once again kind of resembles a circle. And that is how so many things in Islam can be considered a miracle. Let's take a look at one. So this question is about the prophet sucking on the tongue of a little boy. And of course you have to read it in Arabic to get the true meaning. It's not actually the prophet sucking on the tongue. It's the prophet sucking on the tongue of the little boy. And what do we have here? I mean, how do we explain this? You know, you can see these Muslims process. How do we explain Muhammad sucking on this boy's tongue? Well, it turns out it's a miracle. It is a miracle of the prophet. And again, it is a miracle of the apostle of Allah. And just to make sure you get the message in capital letters, a miracle of the prophet. Now, by the way, while we're here, let's talk about this. A miracle of the prophet, I mean, look how many times this occurs just on this page. We can do a search. It occurs 1, 2, 3, and up here somewhere, 4. It occurs 4 times just on this page. Now, if you are a Muslim and you write after Muhammad, you are lazy and ignorant. Those aren't my words, those are the words of your scholars. I'll read to you from my own copy of the Sacred Islamic Law, and I'll put it up on the screen for you so that you can read it with me. One should avoid writing it in 2 defective styles, one of which is deficient in form, i.e. alluding to the blessings by 2 letters or the like, as certain lazy, ignorant, or unlearned people do, writing instead of Allah bless him and give him peace. And once again, I'm just quoting your scholars. Back to the topic of Muhammad's circular reasoning. Watch carefully and remember the Islamic propensity to find miracles in everything that Muhammad did. Watch closely. Muhammad actually invented recycling. Camel urine. Let's move on to the next one. A group of Israelites was lost. No one knows what they did, but I did not see them, except they were cursed and changed into rats. If you put the milk of a she-camel in front of a rat, it will not drink it. But if the milk of a sheep is put in front of it, it will drink it. I told this to Ka'b, who said several times, "Did you hear it from the prophet?" Let's formulate Muhammad's argument. Rats drink sheep milk and not camel milk. Jews drink sheep milk and not camel milk. Conclusion, a group of Israelites was changed into rats. Wow. Not only did Muhammad invent recycling, he also invented non sequiturs. So we've seen enough of Muhammad's logic, especially in this recent example, to get an idea for the way he thinks. And I think we've seen enough to formulate our own arguments using his logic. Allah's messenger said, "The hour will not be established until you fight with the Jews, and the stone behind which the Jew is hiding say, 'O Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, so kill him.'" Look how filthy, vile, and violent this hadith is. It must be weak, if only there's another one in Sahih al-Bukhari to confirm it. There is. Once again, at the end times, the stones will cry out, saying, "There's a Jew behind me, come kill him." But it would be much more reliable if this hadith was in Sahih Muslim as well. It is. You will fight against the Jews and you will kill them until even a stone would say, "Come here, Muslim, there's a Jew, come kill him." Let's read another one just to make sure. The last hour will not come unless the Muslims fight the Jews. And there are those talking stones and trees once again. Come kill the Jews hiding behind me. And with that, we are ready to formulate our first premise. Premise number 1, Muhammad envisioned a future with all Jews killed. Premise number 2 is a very well-known historical fact. We can just look at Wikipedia. The final solution was a Nazi plan for the genocide of the Jews. It was the official code name for the murder of all Jews within reach, which was not restricted to the European continent. Now we're ready to add our second premise to the first. Number 1, Muhammad envisioned a future with all Jews killed. Number 2, Hitler envisioned a future with all Jews killed. Now let's apply Muhammad's logic for our conclusion. Muhammad envisioned a future with all Jews killed. Hitler envisioned a future with all Jews killed. Conclusion, Muhammad was changed into Hitler. And this logic is every bit as valid as Muhammad's Jew, camel milk, rat argument. Let's do another one. Muhammad, of course, consummated his marriage with Aisha when she was 9, and of course, she was carrying her dolls with her, young little girl that she was. Aisha was allowed to play with dolls because she was before the age of puberty. Sometimes Aisha used to play with dolls with her friends, and when Muhammad would come visit, they would leave, and then when Muhammad was finished, her friends would come back in. And of course, later on in Aisha's life, she was still described as a little girl who had not yet reached the age of puberty. The best example for mankind also really liked his fair-skinned women. The Prophet admired Ibrahim, who was fair-skinned and beautiful. He had intercourse with her by virtue of her being his property. Let's look for some modern parallels to see if Muhammad could have been changed into someone else. Here we have a 9-year-old girl being molested, but unfortunately this man is only 20 years old. Muhammad was in his 50s, so this isn't a very good match. Here we have a 9-year-old girl being molested and a 50-year-old man. Now that is a much closer parallel, but the only problem is, does anyone see the problem? Well, we all know that there was a fatwa issued. Anyone who says the Prophet was black should be killed. The Prophet was not black. So it's very simple according to this fatwa. To be deserving of death, all you need to do is say the magic phrase, Muhammad was black. Muhammad was black. Let's move on to some more modern parallels to see if Muhammad could have been changed into anyone else. Well, there's an example of sexual misconduct. There's another example, or here, or maybe this, and definitely this. I think we've accumulated enough evidence at this point to formulate another argument, yet again, in line with the logic of Muhammad. Muhammad sexually violated a young girl and treated women like property. Many Muslim migrants are sexually violating women of all ages all across Europe. Conclusion, Muhammad could have been changed into any one of these sexual predators. Notice our deductive arguments are every bit as valid as Muhammad's, and they contain a lot of explanatory power for things that we've been seeing in our modern world for the last several decades. The wisdom of Muhammad. Now, recently, the Islamophobic, Zionist, racist, white supremacist Christian missionary Dr. David Wood brought to our attention that the logic of Muhammad is still active, unfortunately, in some modern Muslim minds today. An ignoramus by the name of Ahmed Bumjuice declared that he knew who was behind the New Zealand mosque shooting. Take a guess who some Muslims blame for this shooting. The Jews. Or is it Constantine? No, it's definitely the Jews. Not just the Jews, the Israeli intelligence force. Wow. And not just the Israeli intelligence, but it's also a group of local Jews that they apparently worked through who lived near the mosque in some business houses.
And the conspiracy goes deeper because Mossad wasn't alone. Local Zionist businesses in New Zealand were funding the mosque shooter.
And not only them, there are some business houses also who are around, Zionist business houses that are behind him.
How sure is he of this theory? Let's say on a scale of 1 to Aisha, on a scale of 1 to 9, how sure is he?
I will not mince words. I stand here and I say I have a very, very strong suspicion that there is some group behind him, and I am not afraid to say I feel Mossad is behind it.
He's almost Aisha sure. Think about Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, competent enough, smart enough to keep the little state of Israel safe for decades in the middle of much anti-Semitic terrorist activity. They're obviously quite good at what they do, yet according to some Muslims, the best thing that they could come up with was a New Zealand mosque shooting in a plot so transparent that an idiot like Ahmed Bumjuice can figure it out with just a wild guess. Really. Unfortunately, Muhammad's logic and critical thinking skills are still both alive and well in the minds of many modern Muslims today. That's why I say Muslims aren't inherently less intelligent than anyone else. It's just their religion. Islam hinders the intellect. They're just following the example of their prophet, who, even according to Islamic accounts, was something of a dimwit. Report that, Muhammad Shah.